Well, there's something going on here in the United States, something that's, kind of changed. And what is it? Well, it's a lot of things, but one thing is there's some disturbance in the classrooms across the fruited plain. And by that I mean we have an almost epidemic of female teachers having sex with their students. Now, we've done a show about this once already, and now we're doing another one, but this time we're doing it with a bit of a different twist.
You are now listening to the Spearsy Spin with your host, Mike Spears.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Spearsy Spin. Tonight we'll discuss societal evolution and how the wicked and horrible actions of some of those around us have been a desensitizing agent for far too long. As much as we try to illuminate the substructure of our consciousness that has affected our daily thoughts and somehow afforded the United States as a society to accept some behaviors that we see today as bad, but somehow we've tolerated it, sort of. For example, professionals who have been involved with child protective services, domestic abuse evaluations, rape, child rape, physical assault, shooting, stabbing, suicide, and the like. Well, typically these folks will start to show a predisposed, I call it a mental preset for developing a myriad of both physical and mental conditions. In short, these professionals who have seen and dealt with the worst-case scenarios tend to be desensitized. In fact, for a large majority of these folks, their emotions are, they're deadened to the sights, smells, and screams and blood that ultimately are the norm in their given professions. So, bearing in mind that these professionals that we're basically talking about, they do not represent the American population as a whole. However, when psychologists and psychiatrists decided to do an overview of the mental health of the average professional that we're showcasing, the public was a bit astounded at the report, and here's just a few. When we take a look at these folks doing these jobs long term, we see that child protective service people, now these personnel are more prone to alcohol abuse, smoking, overweight, and tend to have addictive behavioral issues. Using that same criteria, professionals dealing with domestic abuse, domestic violence, are often more prone to alcohol abuse, smoking, and, they tend to have addictive behavioral qualities as well. And they also tend to have elevated episodes of CAD, which is short for coronary artery disease. Now, professionals that deal with rape, and especially child rape, assault, shootings, stabbings, and suicides, have a predisposed disposition to alcohol abuse, smoking, recreational drug use, and tend to have addictive behavioral qualities as well as elevated CADs, coronary artery disease. And in short, looking at these professionals, we learned that desensitizing from the rigors of life has severe and life-altering consequences. Now, we as a nation, we've become desensitized for way too many things. For example, wars, beheadings, terrorist attacks, stabbings, murders, the list goes on and on. So, how do we as humans rebalance our psyches? Well, believe it or not, in the United States, we ostensibly defer our most greatest fears into theater.
Back after these messages.
If the black dog of depression makes you feel like the saddest soul on earth, you're not alone. Around 350 million people share this debilitating but treatable condition. If you're worried about someone, ask if they're okay. If you're not doing so well yourself, ask for help. There is no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life. So get help, be helped, and always hold on to hope.
Tell your friends and neighbors about the Spearsy Spin.
Hey, if you follow politics at all, let me ask you this. Tired of political diatribes being aired 24 hours a day by the left? Feel like your country is being pulled apart?
How did this happen? Experienced politician versus racist fake gynecologist.
Get ready for the Spearsy Spin. Hosted by God's gift to radio, Mike Spears. The Spearsy Spin is a 15-minute political overview Monday through Friday of current issues that affect you.
This was a white lash against a changing country. It was a white lash against a black president in part. And that's the part where the pain comes.
Fair and balanced appreciation for liberal and conservative thinking. Mike Spears brings to the show a very impressive resume, extensive background and education in cognitive behavioral sciences. He has rubbed elbows with amazing people in corporate America for years and years. He's owned several businesses himself. 30-plus years in radio, including voiceovers, advertising, programming, and on air. In the 80s, he did stand-up comedy. In 1988, Mike was the headliner of the Cancer Comic Relief Program for the American Cancer Society. As a professional voice impressionist, Mike Spears has voiced thousands of ads and created radio advertising revenue streams for many radio stations. Using his unique voice impersonations, the Spearsy Spin is transcribed for and co-produced by Charles Gleason with studios in Cimarron, California.
Yes, you heard it. Theater. Now, both as individuals acting out in some ways and also as a group, well, at the theater. But it's not just the theater. We see the same thing at Netflix, HBO, Hulu, and whatever the flavor of the week is for our media enjoyment. Now, check this out. The series The Walking Dead is a huge success with an unbelievable following. Now, in this show, people that die come back as flesh-eating zombies who can smell live carbon-based entities, such as humans, and the zombies seek them out and they try to eat them. One bite and you too will become a zombie, as there is no cure, and the only way to stop the living walking dead is to shoot or stab them in the head, preferably through the eye. Now, in the show, the United States comes under a complete and utter shutdown, with about 50% or more of the populace dead or dying, and the rest running through the woods and fields in an effort to escape the zombies. Now, if their plight of survival wasn't enough, now add in the bad guys. Yes, there's bad guys. And these are bands of really bad people and gals that try to kill other living people in the show to take their food and, whatever other personal items they may have. So, if you are one of the living, you spend your day trying to live without being eaten or bitten by the walking dead or killed by the bad guys. You find yourself breaking into homes where, the people there have expired, and then they came back as zombies within their own houses. Now, when breaking in, the characters in the series are looking for food, medicine, and clothing. But the zombies see your illegal entry as an opportunity for which to dine upon you. Here's another morally desensitizing issue. This is an actual news report. Now, this actually happened. This has nothing to do with The Walking Dead. In Albion, New York, police say that a 10-year-old Central New York girl was beaten repeatedly and doused in hot sauce, denied food, and dragged behind a vehicle. 4 adults were arrested after the girl escaped from a home in the Oswego County and in the town of Albion, and that was on Wednesday when she got to a house and asked the neighbor for help. The sheriff's office said the abuse began in April. They claimed the girl was beaten with fists, feet, and an implement and spent days working outside without water or bathroom access. Authorities say that once she was forced to run with a heavy backpack and then tied to a car and dragged along. Deputies also say the girl has been hospitalized to recoup from her injuries. 3 adults who lived at the home were charged with assault and remanded to jail. Another woman has been charged with endangering the welfare of a child.
We have a big problem, and we need your help.
It's happening on college campuses, at bars, at parties, even in high schools.
It's happening to our sisters and our daughters,
our wives and our friends.
It's called sexual assault, and it has to stop.
We have to stop it. So listen up.
If she doesn't consent, or if she can't consent, it's rape, it's assault.
It's a crime. It's wrong.
If I saw it happening, I was taught you have to do something about it.
If I saw it happening, I speak up.
If I saw it happening, I'd never blame her. I'd help her.
Because I don't want to be a part of the problem.
I want to be a part of the solution.
We need all of you to be part of the solution. This is about respect. It's about responsibility.
It's up to all of us to put an end to sexual assault. And that starts with you.
Because one is too many.
So, by now you're wondering, what does this movie review, The Walking Dead, and this news report have to do with women teachers having sex with their students? So, this is, it's only one of thousands of stories, real stories that we look at each week, each month, each year. So much so that we become immune to its horribleness. We're so detached from our societal integrity that we're allowing our own culture to morally decay. Now, if anything can be said about the terrorists and their beheadings of innocent people, it's this. For a time here in the United States, we as a society became enraged by the actions of these ISIS people. Yet, as terror continues to wind its way throughout the world, we see more and more apathy within ourselves, our communities, our states, and yes, our own government. When President Obama took office, there was a huge backlash in this country against him and his policies. There were even hatreds. You've seen and heard the demonstrative diatribe used against the first black president. For 8 years this went on. People made their feelings known, many in no uncertain terms. Now enter 2017 and President Donald Trump. By far, this president has shown to be more of an antagonist to his detractors, bar none. Now, we watch the college campuses with their rallies. We watch the riots, and we watch the rioters. We watch the groups such as BLM, White Lives Matters, the anti-fascist, the KKK, the LGBTQIA, the right, and of course the alt-left, the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, the Women's March, the L. Sharptons, the Spencers, the Linda Sarsours, the Louis Farrakhan's, the far-left liberal professors, the Black Panthers, the new Black Panthers, the Jesse Jacksons, the David Dukes, the Madonnas, the Ashley Judds, and the list goes on from there. Now let's turn our attention to a few others who have been the cause of societal decay. The Unabomber, the .44 caliber killer, John Wayne Gacy, the Boston Strangler, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, Charlie Manson, MS-13, and from Columbine High School, Klebold and Harris, and the countless and senseless mass shootings here in the USA. Now, this list could go on and on and on, and honestly and sadly, longer than you would wish to listen to. So, what is the takeaway then from today's show? Well, it's the introduction of societal environmental ethics. Wait, now we're talking about ecology? No. In this narrative, we're introducing societal thoughts, feelings, and beliefs aligned with the social environment that we find ourselves in today. Now, more importantly, when we talk about, for instance, forensic psychology, psychiatry, we're again talking about our society as a whole and locating the abstracts there within. Now, by definition, those who are truly out of sync with the current psychological mainstream of the norm are the ones, kind of like the criminal types, I guess, the mass murderers, demonic folks, and unhealthy practicing spiritual groups, and others who prey upon society, as a whole. And these are the people that, we really have to become ultra focused on, because it is truly those people that are pushing the moral decay here in the United States. Now, a coined term here might be criminal profiler. Now, why do we need criminal profilers? Well, what is a criminal profiler? Well, it's actually a technique that was brought about by the FBI, and now it's a much needed service for law enforcement. There are forensic psychologists and psychiatrists that are employed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
At age 10, John was the first person in his family to make the honor roll at school. When he was 17, John was the first person in his family to be an Eagle Scout. Upon turning 18, John was the first person in his class to graduate from boot camp. At age 19, John graduated from airborne training. He was first in his class. At 20, John was the first of his siblings to get married. When he was 21, John was a member of the 1st Airborne Unit to enter into Fallujah, Iraq. At age 22, John was the first member of his unit to get the Bronze Star for his actions in combat. At 23, John returned home from Iraq and gave his parents their first grandchild. At age 24, John was the first person in his battalion to commit suicide. John, like many other military men and women, suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. Nearly 40,000 military men and women in current service have been diagnosed with PTSD. If you think you suffer from PTSD, please go to mentalhealth.va.gov. There are support groups all over the United States. People like you, feeling like you, sharing like you want to share. Let us place hope before hopelessness.
And of course, these folks spend a tremendous amount of time researching cases by the people who committed them and are currently in prison. So they are able to put together a little bit of a construct of who the police should be looking for. Well, there you go. So you have the FBI profilers, and you have some female teachers having sex with their students. But how does this all tie in? What are we talking about? Well, here then is the coup de grace. Allow me to introduce to you a gentleman named David Parker Ray posthumously. David Parker Ray was also known as the Toy Box Killer. Excuse me. Also, he was a serial torturer, killer of women. Now, Mr. Ray was actively torturing women from the 1950s till 1999, and he has been convicted of doing this with 3 victims. However, police believe he was actually guilty of approximately 50 abductions, tortures, and deaths. Now, Mr. Ray was eventually caught in New Mexico and subsequently was serving out his sentence there at the Lea County Correctional Center in Hobbs, New Mexico. He actually died in prison in 2002 of a heart attack. So, what did the neighbors think of Mr. Ray? Well, He was married, had kids, dressed to the T daily, hardly ever missed any work, always had a well-groomed lawn, and he always had a tidy home, and he was friendly, and he always had polite conversations with his neighbors. Sometimes when the neighbors were away, he would shovel out their driveway and clean out their sidewalk. For all accounts, Mr. Ray would be considered, a great neighbor and friend. So when he was arrested for murder and sex crimes, well, once again, we hear the neighbors telling the same thing over and over and over and over that we've heard for years, which is, what a nice person he was. And they just can't believe it. He was actually a sexual sadist, and he had a small camper in his backyard that he used as a torture chamber for years. Now, David Parker Ray appeared charming and admired women, but once again, he was not what he portrayed. He was a monster, and he'd been torturing women in his backyard for years. Now, of course, in the neighborhood, he was the neighbor from heaven. Everybody thought he was just wonderful. An American serial killer living next door. Wow. So this is just another case of not knowing who your neighbors are. But what of those folks who commit crimes that seem, to astound so many people and actually have neighbors cringing in fear? Well, sadly, 1% of the current population in this country are hiding something. Something bizarre, something not kosher, or something ultimately horrible. Female and male predators, predator teachers, would fall into this category. In our society today, we have stripped away so much of our unconscious acceptable behavioral theories that we as a society, we appear naked to the world, philosophically speaking, of course. Today we focus on these female teachers that have, they've not been able to identify themselves to the world for exactly who they are or what they represent. Therefore, they tend to live in self-denial. The sexual acting out it's more of a comforting tool for these women, as it garners them an exact place within the societal pecking order, or so they assume. Now also, women by and large are more concerned about, believe it or not, the core of society's moral beliefs, and they actually harbor more of a need to control its possible demise. Now, these same female teachers, in some bizarre way, have concocted the mental construct that society has reduced the bar of intolerance to such a point that they feel they should, give in to wild and taboo pleasures. Moreover, there is a constant here, and that is, it's both baffling and unsettling. See, as a group, many of these female sexual predators, they did not, as a rule anyway, consider birth control a desirable need. Now, we know this by debriefing these folks after they've been convicted and are serving a sentence, and they're in therapy and so on. And that's where this information comes from. But moreover, many of these same women found themselves to actually be willing to conceive a child with their adolescent lovers.
On Friday, February 25th, 1994, 17-year-old Alfonso Edwards wrecked the first car our father ever bought him. After leaving the scene of the accident and arriving home, he received a phone call from his girlfriend stating that she could possibly be pregnant. In an act of hopelessness and distress, my brother and only sibling walked downstairs to the den of our home and shot himself in the face. The car accident was only a minor fender bender, and his girlfriend wasn't pregnant. Each year, 5,000 teenagers commit suicide, and for every death, there are 50 to 100 attempts. We must put a stop to this unspoken tragedy. We can be aware of the warning signals, like sudden changes in behavior and constant mood swings. For more information, please visit www.teensuicide.us and let your teen know that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
So our moral compass is way off here in the United States, and these teachers here today may in some way be trying to tell us as a whole that something needs to change. So, is it the end of times? Is it Armageddon? Or is it just a bump in the road with man's destiny? Believe it or not, within 5 years, and put me on the calendar, expect lawmakers to lower the age of consent for minors, and most likely for crimes related to teachers and their sexual activities with their students. Expect a lessening of consequences. Don't believe it? Go back 20 years ago and see where we were on this issue, teachers, students, and sex, and where we are today. Well, that's what we think. Now we'd like to know what you think, so please visit us at thespearsyspin.blogspot.com and let us know what you think. Be watching for 2 great shows that are coming up here soon. The first, you're going to love this, Sacramento, California. You know, they have all this crime and people getting hurt, stabbed, shot, and murdered. Well, they come up with an idea and they think it's going to work. Are you ready? Well, hang on to something, because Sacramento, California plans to pay gang members $1.5 million to keep the peace in Sacramento. We'll have that story. And we're also going to revisit a story that we did months ago about a convicted rapist, pedophile, predator named Pastor Tony Alamo, who passed away in prison recently. Now, he had many sexual allegations as well as other charges that put him in prison for life. But several listeners have written to us here at The Spin saying, you have it wrong, Spears. He was framed, and we can prove it. So we're going to revisit that. We've already started looking into different evidences that have been given to us. So that show will be aired here soon. Now, also, along with that same theory, many of the folks out there have written to us about Waco. Remember Waco? And have said that Waco was a total extermination plot by the FBI and ATF, they claim, because of sensitive, leaked computer information. They claim they have information that will prove this. So we'll be doing the Waco story sometime down the road, and we're working on all these and so many more. So we will bring them to you as quickly as we get them together. We don't want to just throw something together to have it on the air. Speaking of that, also getting some emails here. Basically, we go to where we normally go to get your show, which it might be, I don't even know what all it is on. I don't do that part, but I know it's on like the YouTube thing. It's on minds.com, like Tumblr and Blogger and Facebook and Google and whatever, Repost Media. So I asked about that to see what, why that might be, why you're not getting all the shows. And I talked to the almighty guru down there in beautiful Cimarron, California. His name, Charlie Gleason. And I said, hey, what's the deal, buddy? And he said, well, some of the shows that we do, are for on-air only. And I said, well, I don't understand. He said, your shows that appear like on, the Google or the YouTube or Twitter, Tumblr, and all that, those shows have been completed and then they have been, put out for rebroadcast. But your regular taped shows, some of the regular tape shows are for on-air only, because they're not allowed, apparently, to have the commercials in them and whatever else they do once they get it down there. So what I can tell you is that there's a show that you're missing, that you didn't get, you want to hear it, get a hold of me. I will talk to the almighty guru to find out where it is. Now, if you're anywhere near California, you can check some of the stations in Central California especially, and see if they carry, I can't think of what they're calling that out there now, but it would be the Spearsy Spin. They would know that. All right, other than that, till we meet again, we will see everybody. Remember, there's only one world, and you got to learn how to live in it peacefully. Till next time, see ya.